chemistry as well. Anyway, so let's start po. Okay. Okay. So for today, we'll be talking about the following. So we'll talk about the energy and life, the trophic diversity in nature, the photosynthetic pathways, and how does photosynthesis is related to soil fertilization. So chemistry po ito ng konti. Okay, so let's start. So living organisms are made up of matter and energy. This is very basic. And the matter imparts the structure in terms of shape and size to the organisms. And the matter itself, of course, it exists in very common to in three states. Usually, the basic, we have the solid, the liquid, and the gas. Now, yung solid natin, it comprises all the nutrients, while the water, while the major component ng isang matter, it's usually in the liquid state. Now, we have nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and oxygen are the three main gases live in all living organisms. So, however, yung matter, it doesn't makes it function. Kumbaga, it's not the matter that functions. It actually the energy that push for the matter to function. Now, aside from nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and oxygen, we have carbon in living organisms. And this carbon should be get fixed through the process of photosynthesis. Now, that is for the photoautotrophs. Meron din tayong for other microorganisms, we have the chemosynthesis. Then for others, they derive the energy coming from the organic molecules. So yung mga kumakain ng organic foods, just like the fungi and the animals. But the matter in living systems do not exist in isolation. So they are actually integrated. And matter cannot function without energy making it function. So kumbaga, a particular matter will not move without the energy pushing it. So that is all throughout the different matter present in Earth. Now, the energy, it dwells with the bonds of molecules within the structures of the individual organisms. So the collection of all of this is what we call food. Now, I have a question here. Does matter in an organism is a fixed amount? Anyone po? Anyone who can try to answer po? Does matter in an organism is a fixed amount? Okay. Wala po bang gustong mag-volunteer? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So the matter in an organism is not a fixed amount. It has never been a fixed amount because we have what we call metabolism. So we have anabolism and catabolism. So this is where the organism nagkakaroon siya ng wear and tear. So for an organism to maintain this wear and tear, it depends on molecules kung saan natin sinusource out yung ating energy, and that is food. So this include all the materials necessary in alliance with the energy. Now again, food is the source of nutrients and energy of all the organisms. And all organisms, we grow, we reproduce, we blossom due to food. And doon sa food na yon, nandoon yung nutrients and energy which are the very sources of the existence and dynamism and sustainability of life. So ganun yung nangyayari. So we really need food for an organism to survive. Now the question is, paano yun sa plants? So we have the photosynthesis for the plants, and diba, the usual definition that we have for the plants for any crops, for plants in general, is they create their own food. They make up their own food. That's why the energy source is the main energy source is actually the light. Now, there are three sources of energy in Earth. We have the light, the inorganic molecules, and the organic molecules. Now, for those that are dependent on light, they are called photoautotropes. Then for those that depend on inorganic molecules, they are known as chemoautotropes. They undergo chemosynthesis. Now, for those that depends on organic molecules, generally they are known as heterotrophs. Now, sa mundo, we have a diversity of organisms, and mainly ang pinaka ano po natin is of course our focus for today are the plants, but we have the following living kingdoms. We have the prokaryotes, the bacteria, and the archaea. So most of them, they are photosynthetic, chemosynthetic, and heterotrophs. Now for protists, most of them are chemosynthetic. For plants, they are photosynthetic and heterotrophic. Then for fungi, they are heterotrophic. Then for animals, there are also heterotrophic. But as you can see in this table, most of the living kingdoms, they're actually heterotrophs, meaning they rely on organic molecules. Okay, so the light, since light, yung pinaka main source, particularly for plants, it actually enters the earth through the leaves. So lahat ng forms of energy on earth, basically their origin is on the light. And leaves are very much interesting because they serve as the gateway. They serve as the bridge between the sun and the earth, or between the inorganic universe and the organic biosphere. So since well, since elementary, since high school, photosynthesis has been taught to us, and a very good machinery na develop sa isang organism are the leaves. So leaves, it serves as the gateway for the energy to enter from the universe, from outside the planet, coming into the earth. So basically, if we don't have the leaves, yung ating mga photoautotropes, they cannot produce their own food, they cannot survive. So basically, there will be no life. Now, this is just a structure of a certain leaf. So we have the petiole, the base, the vein, margin, midrib, blade, and apex. So we usually use this in defining for taxonomic purposes or for systematic purposes. And anatomically, so morphological yung kanina, anatomically, we have the following. So this is where the solar radiation or the light comes through. So ito yung nasa loob. And the most prominent na feature natin for an energy, for the slight energy to enter sa mga leaves, we have the stomata. So familiar tayong lahat doon sa stomata. So this is where the energy, the light energy really passes through. So dyan nakadepend yung most of the plants. Now, if there is the leaf, there's a leaf and light relationship, there should be there. Of course, there are inputs and there are outputs of it. So basically, these are the inputs and outputs on how the processes of several processes uh, come into space pagdating sa mga leaves. So we have for inputs, of course, those are the radiation. It may be short wave or long wave. For the outputs, we have, of course, the long wave radiation. Sometimes waves are being conducted and they undergo conduction and convection. And there's also transpiration, transmission, and reflectance, and energy in carbon compounds. So this is how it is depicted. So we have usually the four these outputs are actually grouped accordingly. So we have the net radiation, we have the sensible energy, we have the latent energy, and the chemical energy. So these are the energy that is being processed inside a certain leaf. And the most common, of course, is of course the photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, this is the usual, ito yung usual natin na formula. So the photosynthesis, it functions during the light and dark reactions. We have the light dependent reactions, those plants that depend on light. But photosynthesis is often referred to as, of course, carbon fixation. This is a biochemical reaction that incorporates carbon dioxide into a carbon-containing acid. So all photosynthetic organisms do not carry out this kind of energy in the same manner. There are several organisms or several plants na they're already adapted to a particular environment. So what you can see, you can, naalala niyo po ba itong portion na to? So this is photosynthesis in general, but of course, when light passes through the leaves, it occurs in two parts, basically three parts, but mainly we have the photosynthesis and we have the Calvin cycle. So those are the processes na very important in terms of how the light is actually coming through dito sa mundo. So let's talk about the Calvin cycle. Calvin cycle is this one. But di ba, photosynthesis, we produce the ATP and ATP. But ang carbon kasi kailangan siyang ma-fix. So it should undergo the Calvin cycle. So I have a video here. So I just took it from YouTube. Let's watch it together. This is a very good video na it actually explain in a simple ways yung Calvin cycle. I find this very elementary, but it will help us understand the mechanism on how the light is being converted into different means. So let's watch it. Very short lang naman to.
You're facing a giant bowl of energy-packed carbon crunchies. 1 spoonful, 2, 3. Soon, you're powered up by the energy surge that comes from your meal. But how did that energy get into your bowl? Energy exists in the form of sugars made by the plant your cereal came from, like wheat or corn. As you can see, carbon is the chemical backbone, and plants get their fix of it in the form of carbon dioxide, CO2, from the air that we all breathe. But how does a plant's energy factory, housed in the stroma of the chloroplast, turn a 1-carbon gas like CO2 into a 6-carbon solid like glucose? If you're thinking photosynthesis, you're right. But photosynthesis is divided into 2 steps. The first, which stores energy from the sun in the form of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And the second, the Calvin cycle, that captures carbon and turns it into sugar. This second phase represents one of nature's most sustainable production lines. And so with that, welcome to the world's most minuscule factory. The starting materials? A mix of CO2 molecules from the air and pre-assembled molecules called ribulose bisphosphate, or RUBP, each containing 5 carbons. The initiator? An industrious enzyme named Rubisco that welds one carbon atom from a CO2 molecule with the RUBP chain to build an initial 6-carbon sequence. That rapidly splits into 2 shorter chains containing 3 carbons each and called phosphoglycerates, or PGAs for short. Enter ATP and another chemical called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, or just NADPH. ATP, working like a lubricant, delivers energy, while NADPH affixes one hydrogen to each of the PGA chains, changing them into molecules called glyceraldehyde 3 phosphates, or G3Ps. Glucose needs 6 carbons to form, made from 2 molecules of G3P, which incidentally have 6 carbons between them. So sugar has just been manufactured, right? Not quite. The Calvin cycle works like a sustainable production line, meaning that those original RUBPs that kicked things off at the start need to be recreated by reusing materials within the cycle now. But each RUBP needs 5 carbons, and manufacturing glucose takes a whole 6. Something doesn't add up. The answer lies in one phenomenal fact. While we've been focusing on this single production line, 5 others have been happening at the same time. With 6 conveyor belts moving in unison, there isn't just one carbon that gets soldered to one RUBP chain, but 6 carbons soldered to 6 RUBPs. That creates 12 G3P chains instead of just 2, meaning that altogether 36 carbons exist, the precise number needed to manufacture sugar and rebuild those RUBPs. Of the 12 G3Ps pooled together, 2 are siphoned off to form that energy-rich 6-carbon glucose chain, the one fueling you via your breakfast. Success! But back on the manufacturing line, the byproducts of this sugar production are swiftly assembled to recreate those 6 RUBPs. That requires 30 carbons, the exact number contained by the remaining 10 G3Ps. Now a molecular mix and match occurs. 2 of the G3Ps are welded together, forming a 6-carbon sequence. By adding a third G3P, a 9-carbon chain is built. The first RUBP, made up of 5 carbons, is cast from this, leaving 4 carbons behind. But there's no wastage here. Those are soldered to a 4th G3P molecule, making a 7-carbon chain. Added to a 5th G3P molecule, a 10-carbon chain is created. Enough now to craft 2 more RUBPs. With 3 full RUBPs recreated from 5 of the 10 G3Ps, simply duplicating this process will renew the 6 RUBP chains needed to restart the cycle again. So the Calvin cycle generates the precise number of elements and processes required to keep this biochemical production line turning endlessly. And it's just one of the hundreds of cycles present in nature. Why so many? Because if biological production processes were linear, they wouldn't be nearly as efficient or successful at using energy to manufacture the materials that nature relies upon, like sugar. Cycles create vital feedback loops that repeatedly reuse and rebuild ingredients, crafting as much as possible out of the planet's available resources. Such as that sugar, built using raw sunlight and carbon, converted in plant factories to become the energy that powers you and keeps the cycles revolving in your own life.
Okay. So what we have watched, of course, is the Calvin cycle. So Calvin cycle, this is how the sugar is being formed. So sa ating mga plants, they create their own food. Then their product, of course, nakita natin doon sa photosynthesis. The product is the end point, the result, the output is actually sugar. So it's the form of glucose. And the Calvin cycle is a cycle, kaya siya tinawag na cycle. I'm being redundant. This process is a cycle creating a feedback loop wherein in this procedure, in this process, kailangan it will be repeated for in 6 times. 6 times dapat nagagawa yung proseso na yun. I have another video here, similar, talking about Calvin cycle, but this time it's more of technical siya. So yung kanina, it's parang cartoony in a way that it simplifies the discussion. But this time, we're talking about the Calvin cycle in a technical means.
The leaves of this plant have cells that carry out photosynthesis. If we zoom in on this photosynthetic plant cell, we can see the chloroplast, where the reactions of photosynthesis occur. Photosynthesis consists of 2 primary steps, the light reactions and the Calvin cycle reactions. In this tutorial, we'll focus exclusively on the Calvin cycle reactions. The overall purpose of the Calvin cycle is to convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into carbohydrates, or sugars, which the plant needs to power its cellular activities and build new plant structures. The Calvin cycle reactions occur within the stroma of the chloroplast. The reactions use the ATP and NADPH produced by the light reactions to convert the CO2 to carbohydrate. Let's zoom into the Calvin cycle to take a closer look. The Calvin cycle could be divided into 3 phases: carbon dioxide fixation, carbon dioxide reduction, and regeneration of RUBP. The first phase, carbon dioxide fixation, basically captures the CO2 from the atmosphere so it can be used in the reactions. To do this, CO2 is attached to RUBP, a 5-carbon molecule. The enzyme used in this reaction is called rubisco, and the result of the reaction is an unstable 6-carbon molecule that quickly splits into 2 3-carbon molecules called 3-phosphoglycerate, or 3PG. Next, the process of converting the CO2 to carbohydrate begins. This phase is called the carbon dioxide reduction phase because we're adding electrons and energy to the CO2 molecule. During this phase, a sequence of reactions uses NADPH and some of the ATP from the light reactions. These molecules supply the needed electrons and energy for CO2 reduction. Electrons are added from NADPH, and through a series of reactions, 3PG is reduced to form G3P, a carbohydrate. ADP and NADP+ return to the thylakoids to be converted back to ATP and NADPH by the light reactions. One of the G3P molecules is set aside to be used as a building block for glucose, but the majority of the G3P molecules move forward into the 3rd phase of the Calvin cycle. In this phase, ATP is used to combine the rest of the G3P molecules to form RUBP molecules. This RUBP can then combine with additional carbon dioxide molecules, continuing the carbon reactions. To form a glucose molecule, the cycle actually has to turn 6 times, because each turn of the cycle adds only 1 carbon atom from the incoming carbon dioxide. It's important to remember that the Calvin cycle is dependent on the light reactions to provide NADPH and ATP, which in turn provide the electrons and energy needed to form carbohydrates.
Right. So that very short video, this time naman it presented the 3 phases of the Calvin cycle. Though dun sa previous video na present naman yun, but this video in particular, it differentiated the 3 phases of the Calvin cycle. It starts with the fixation, the reduction, then how the regeneration of the RUBP in the cell, in the plant cell. So this is generally the real photosynthesis on how the carbon dioxide is converted into carbohydrates or into glucose. Now, but of course, yung mga ating mga plants, iba-iba yung mga characteristics niyan, iba-iba yung kanilang mga excuse me, kanilang mga features. So we have several biochemical pathways of photosynthesis. So it's not true to all. To generally the basic principle is common, yung kumbaga the whole process itself, but where does it occur? It varies depending on the plant. So we have three biochemical pathways of biosynthesis. We have the C3 photosynthesis, we have the C4 photosynthesis, and we have the crassulacean acid metabolism or CAM photosynthesis. So these pathways are determined according to ecological differences of the photosynthetic organisms. So the organisms, nagbabago lang yan because yung C3 natin, kung ano yung nabubuong carbon. So example, for C3 photosynthesis, the carbon that is produced is three carbon molecules. So for C4 photosynthesis, that's four carbon molecules. So generally, we have C3 plants, we have C4 plants, and we have the CAM plants. Now, yung C3 photosynthesis natin, this is basically the process. So, ang output lang lagi nito, it's actually the three carbon molecules. Now, usually, most of the plants, generally, they undergo C3 plants. So usually we have the soybeans, we have those. The rice is actually a C3 plant as well. Now, C4 photosynthesis naman, this time the process it undergo actually in the mesophyll cell and bundle sheath cell. Dito naman, it occurs to itong mga C4 plants. Ito yung for these plants that can grow to a drier climate. So we have the maize, we have the corn as a very good example of a C4 plant. This time, we have PEP carboxylase. Ito yung this is very much needed so that 4 carbon molecule will be produced. Then lastly, we have the CAM or the CAM photosynthesis. Dito naman, this is how they store the carbon for night and day. So para magamit siya dun sa it occurs at night para magamit siya during the day. So it undergoes at the mesophyll cell. I have here another very simple video of the photosynthesis of these three types of plants. So you have the C3, C4, and CAM plants. Or natin siya ulit.
Photosynthesis is the process by which plants capture the energy of the sun to make carbohydrates. But there are minor variations in how plants do this, depending on the environment in which the plant lives. In this tutorial, we'll look at the differences between the three types of photosynthesis: C3, C4, and CAM. Most plants, around 85% or so, carry out C3 photosynthesis. As we will see, the name C3 has to do with the type of carbon molecule produced during the process. C3 photosynthesis occurs in the mesophyll cells of the C3 plant, which are located just under the surface of the leaves and other tissues. Let's take a quick look at how photosynthesis occurs in these cells. During C3 photosynthesis, CO2 is taken up and transported directly to the Kelvin cycle, where it's fixed into a 3-carbon molecule, thus the name C3. If the stomata are open, CO2 moves in and oxygen moves out of the cell. But under hot or dry conditions, when the stomata are closed, oxygen accumulates, which inhibits the amount of C3 that can be made. Some plants have evolved an adaptation that allows them to be successful in hot, dry conditions. These plants carry out C4 photosynthesis instead of C3 photosynthesis. During C4 photosynthesis, CO2 moves into the mesophyll cell and is immediately fixed into a 4-carbon molecule, thus the name C4 photosynthesis. But the anatomy of a C4 plant is different from that of a C3 plant. A somewhat simplified version of this process is shown here. In a C4 leaf, chloroplasts are located in mesophyll cells, but they are also located in bundle sheath cells, which surround the leaf vein. CO2 moves from the mesophyll cells into the bundle sheath cells where the Calvin cycle occurs. This shields the plant from the oxygen buildup that would otherwise occur when the stomata are closed during dry conditions. A second way of addressing the problem of oxygen is to change the timing of photosynthesis. This is called CAM photosynthesis, and in many ways it's similar to C4 photosynthesis, except that the timing of the process changes. During CAM photosynthesis, CO2 is taken up during the night when the stomata are open and is fixed into a 4-carbon molecule. It's then stored until daylight as an intermediate molecule, which gives the CAM cycle its name. This adaptation allows photosynthesis to occur in drier climates than in both C3 and C4 photosynthesis. A great example of a CAM plant is the cactus. Let's do a quick review. During C3 photosynthesis, CO2 is taken up and transported directly to the Calvin cycle. The C4 pathway alters the location of photosynthesis, and the CAM pathway changes the timing. Both of these adaptations allow some plants to survive in environments that are less than ideal for the typical C3 plant.
Okay. So those are the difference. Those are the differences of the C3, C4, and CAM plants. So, baka itanong ninyo, bakit natin pinag-uusapan tong mga photosynthetic pathways na to? This is very important because this is um, how a plant can survive. So without this process, wala tayong mga halaman, wala tayong mga crops na aalagaan, wala tayong kakainin. Basically, human beings, we are heterotrophs. Okay, so we rely on, and generally we are herbivores. So we rely on food, we rely on plants. So kaya sinasabi dito, if we will go back doon sa ating pinakaunang slide, ang sabi, it's the light. All form of energy in Earth, yung origin niya laging light. Okay, so let's continue. So we have the first law of thermodynamics. So first law of thermodynamics, it says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Meaning the energy can only be converted from one form to another. So dito sa mundo, sa Earth, we have the solar energy that is transformed into biochemical energy through the process of photosynthesis and subsequently into heat energy or through the process of respiration. So that is generally that is the carbon cycle, carbon oxygen cycle. So dito, this is what is happening. So we have the atmospheric carbon dioxide, we have the photosynthesis and respiration occurring between the plants. And when the plants die, so ang nangyayari, of course, it become an organic matter. So magiging part siya ng, they will be decomposed first, and it will be part of the organic matter. And meaning, yung lahat ng energy ay hindi naman siya nawala. So it is still in there in a different form. So this explains the first law of thermodynamics in the context of the Earth's ecosystems. Now, why we are talking about this? Because that's how the soil fertilization begins. So photosynthesis is the original source of the soil fertilization. So those non-decomposed plants and animal residues, they make up the organic fraction, they make up the SOM or the soil organic matter, which is actually heterogeneous and dynamic substance. However, they varies in terms of the carbon, the particle size, the decomposition size, or decomposition rate, and turnover time. But basically, it is the photosynthesis, yung mga photosynthesis that starts the soil fertilization, on the ground. So this is actually my last slide. Very quick discussion on the energy relations. This is a sort of a review, but we tackled more in detail doon sa carbon, sa photosynthesis. Now, we'll have an activity. This will be submitted within the day. This is the question I would like you to answer or to ponder on. So we see from the discussion, we see the sun, the soil, the plant relationship. So my question, how does this kind of relationship became the evolutionary ladder of life? So how does this relationship cause this kind of evolution sa life, sa life on Earth? Okay, so ang gagawin po natin is I'll ask you to this is an asynchronous activity. So for our remaining time, so we have 2 hours remaining. For our remaining time, I'll be asking you to create a short video, probably 1 or 2 minutes video, 1 to 3 minutes, sorry, 1 to 3 minutes video of yourself answering this question and explaining it. So how does the sun, soil, plant relationship became the evolutionary ladder of life? So we have been talking about this coming from the light, coming from the soil, coming from the plant, from the previous slides. But I would like you to contribute in this discussion by creating a video and answering this question. So questions po. Before I'll give you this the remaining time to answer this question.
Sir, good morning po.
Yes, sir.
How many minutes po yung video?
1 to 3 minutes, sir.
Sorry, 1. Ang due po ay
So within the day, sir, you can use our time, but I'll be expecting it within the day. So that's just only 1 to 3 minutes, but I think you'll be spending more time researching about this because it relates on the evolution. So this is an asynchronous activity that will answer, actually, it will connect the three, the sun, the soil, and the plant. But basically, dun po sa previous discussion, ay dito sa discussion natin, some of which is already answered. So, but at this time, I just want it to hear it from you. So
sir, it could be somehow kumbaga parang a laymanized from our end, sir. Insight.
Yes, sir. Yun, sir, yung gusto kong coming from you.
Tapos sir, yung submission po is through the portal?
Yes, through the portal. So I believe I already created the, check ko lang,
yung Genomio.
Yeah, Genomio. So yeah, this will be submitted doon sa portal. I hope naka-access na po yung iba. I haven't made one for I think hindi pa po ako nakagawa for kay Ma'am Bell and kay Ma'am Virgie because I don't have the emails. Ma'am Bell, can you please chat dito sa Zoom chat yung email niyo po?
Yes po, Doc.
And also Ma'am Virgie, kasi I think when I asked the class to fill out the forms, parang hindi pa po ata kayo nakapag-fill out. So hindi ko po nagawan ng account. Thank you po. But for the rest, were you able to access po yung account? Check ko lang, no? Kasi in here, I'll be sharing my screen. So I think si Ma'am Tricia haven't accessed it yet. Ma'am Tricia, you can try to access yung pong portal so that I know kung baka may problem with sometimes with the emails. So baka po na nasa spam
Sir,
usually.
ma-access ko na po. Nag-upload din po ako ng activity.
Okay, so baka hindi lang ito na-update. I'll check it later. So okay. So any other questions po?
Sir, so parang gagawa po kami ng 3 minutes video sa point of view namin ng pinag-aralan natin today, sir. Parang
Yes.
vlogger, parang vlog.
Yeah, a simple explanation on, of course, how does this relationship, answering actually yung, how does this became a cause of evolution? Kasi evolutionary ladder of life. So ang input po actually generally, it will be coming from what we have discussed. But you can also search on your own. But generally what we want to do is, I would like to hear it from you. So yun po siya. Ma'am, I hope I'm clear with that.
Sir, pwede po kami mag-request ng slides po today?
Yes, ma'am. I already uploaded this one dun po sa portal. So you can view po itong slides. But I'll also give a separate pero I hope you can view it po dito because I'm using Canva sa paggawa po ng slides. I'll try also to upload a PDF version of this.
Thank you po.
Opo. So I'll also send out the link nung kung doon nasa portal din po 'yon. Yung link po nung mismong mga videos. So that because these are just available in YouTube, public materials naman sila. So you can also rewatch them. But if you'll be using yung pong Canva link that I shared in the portal, you can watch it directly without going to YouTube. Okay po. I hope very technical po tayo ngayon. This is really the chemistry part of physiology. And especially when we talk about physiology, we're talking about processes. So we're just starting off. And by next meeting, ang pag-uusapan naman po natin is nutrient relations. You're familiar with this because NPK, yung usual natin na encounter when we are talking about agricultural plants, crops. So I know you can share more of this by next meeting. So yun po yung magiging topic natin. And by the way, I also uploaded in the portal yung pong oral reports, but I haven't included kasi po I think same situation po si Ma'am Bell at saka si Ma'am Virgie. Ma'am Virgie, I asked actually Ma'am Bell before we started the discussion na wala po yung pangalan yung ma'am doon sa aking portal, doon sa enrollment portal kung saan po ako nagbibigay ng grades. So ano po yung sabi ma'am sa inyo ng grad school?
Hello, Doc. Good morning po. Hello po, Doc.
Hello po. Yes, ma'am.
Ano po, pakiulit ang tanong niyo, Doc?
Sorry. Ano po, ma'am? When I check the portal, ko po, dun kung saan po ako naglalagay ng, kung saan po ako maglalagay ng grades. Yung pong names po ninyo ni Ma'am Bell and Ma'am kayo po is hindi po siya available. So wala po siya dun sa list of official students enrolled to my class. So So ano po yung sabi ma'am ng grad school sa inyo? Kasi I already asked Ma'am Bell a while ago. At ang sabi is they are in
Parang
the tutorial.
Dok, opo, parang sa amin po kasi Dok parang tutorial po yung ano po sa amin eh. Dalawa po
Oh,
kami ni Ma'am Bell.
opo. Yes ma'am. Sige po. Kasi kaya ako din po siya natanong kasi at the end of the semester will be I'll be posting the grades. So kapag po kasi wala yung grade, it is as if na hindi po nakuha yung klase. So I'll just follow up. So same situation po pala. So I'll just follow it up with the grad school by next week, come Monday, para po hindi tayo magka-problema at the end of the semester. Baka po kasi parang tinake nyo yung class pero hindi ko po kayo mabigyan ng grade, or you might be enrolled to a different different subject kasi na tutorial. Nakwento ko po kanina kay Ma'am Bell, I have a tutorial class also last mid-year. Last semester, pero nag-appear po siya kasi sa account ko kung saan po ako nagpo-post ng grades. So sige po, I'll follow it up with the grad school po by next week. Okay. So before I will let you do the activity, so let's have a documentation first of the meeting for today. May I request everyone to turn on their cameras. Ayun po. Okay. So wala po tayong very technical kasi yung topic natin ngayon, so wala tayong masyadong sharing. But I hope by next week, because we're talking about nutrients, mas makakapagkaroon tayo ng sharing. Okay, so in count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Isa pa po, in count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so again po, please visit po yung portal natin and just try to ping me if you cannot access it po. I also posted yung pong instruction for the oral reports para po makapag-start na tayo ng oral reports come next week also. Okay, so I think that would be all for today. Thank you po for your time this morning, and please utilize our time po doon sa remaining 2 hours so that you can do the 3-minute video answering the question that I posted. How does the sun-soil plant relationship became the evolutionary ladder of life? So again po, thank you and good morning.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Dok. Thank you po.